All right, welcome back. It is time for another episode of the Power Rankings. It's been a few weeks since I've done this, obviously since the end of the first tour and now the resumption of the DPC now with the spring tour. I'm going to be getting back into it every single Friday. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with Power Rankings or how they work, or at least how they work on my channel, this is basically going to be a ranking of how strong I think every single team in the DPC is. I strictly stick to matches from the DPC, meaning if there's any sort of outside tournament or third-party tournament, I don't include those results. It's possible that it could influence my decision with moving certain teams up or down, but at the end of the day, I do not make it my final decision based on those results. And one more thing is that with these power rankings is that they're completely personal. They're completely based on my opinion. I try and watch as much Dota as possible, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to agree with every single one of you. So if you guys do have any issue with my list or you just disagree with certain picks, feel free to let me know in the comments down below with your reason as to why. I would love to hear it. And as I mentioned yesterday, which in case you guys didn't catch that video, this power rankings is going to be a little bit different. First of all, it is the first power ranking in a few weeks, meaning that some of these placements could be a little bit wonky. Some of these teams might not be able to play as highly as they are rated on my list right now, or might be much better than where they are if they're near the bottom. But just because we are at the very beginning, that's going to be a little off. And as we get further into the tour, expect some changes to come for some of these teams, some more than others. And as well as it being the first power rankings, I'm also not going to be including any teams from Eastern Europe just because that tour isn't starting. There's just no realistic way that I can compare these teams to Eastern Europe right now. So until we get that tour started, they will not be included. And I will also not be including, just for this week, the teams coming in from the lower division who haven't played in the matches in the upper division yet, which as of recording this is only Brame, Extreme, Magma, and DogChamp. So next week they will be included in the list, but for now, again, no realistic way for me to actually compare them to the teams in here. We haven't seen them play in this tour yet. But yeah, all right, getting through this list, and I am going to be going through this quite quickly just because we're only 1 week in, so there isn't all that much to talk about with a bunch of these teams. This is kind of just going to be the groundwork for the rest of the power rankings of this tour. But kicking things off at number 36, because again, 8 teams from Eastern Europe not included, and then 4 teams that haven't played any matches yet from the lower division not included. At number 36, aka last spot for right now, I have Hakori. I expressed this in my video that I made, or certain videos that I've made throughout the past few days, that I have my concerns with Hakori. There were a lot of teams in the bottom of South America that I think were very, very weak in the last tour, and we had the relegation of both NoPing and SG Esports, but I also think that Hakori and Lava could have very easily been in that position as well, and so I'm a little bit concerned about them. And they get off to a pretty rough start too. Sure, they play against Thunder Awakened, who is one of the best teams in South America, but I am a little bit worried about Hakori and them being able to keep up with this, especially since that series didn't exactly look all that close. But again, one of the best teams in the division. We'll see how they're able to do against some other teams later on. At number 35, we have Simply 2-Based, and funnily enough, is that you can already tell just looking at the bottom and these first few teams I'm going to be naming that the upper divisions in every single region are much stronger, because Simply 2-Based in the first tour was off to a pretty rough start, but already Simply 2-Based looks to be getting off to a bit better of a start this time around. They do lose their first series 2-1 to 4 Zoomers, but there were a lot of notable highlights in those games. First of all, I thought their drafting has really come a long way. Their changes in the offlane, bringing in Bloody Sky as opposed to Lil Nick, I thought has been pretty good, even though he did kind of struggle a little bit when he was playing his Mars in that series. But all in all, again, 4 Zoomers being one of the better teams in North America. Not one of the best, but again, one of the better teams. I thought this was a pretty fantastic first series for Simply 2-Based, and I'm hoping that this is the start of what should be an improvement on the previous tour. And so, for now, they're at number 35, but if I'm being hopeful, I can see them moving up in the coming weeks. At number 34, I have Enigma Galaxy Southeast Asia. And again, just looking at these picks, you can already tell that these upper divisions are much stronger than they were. Enigma Galaxy, I think, is a fantastic team. It's just because of the nature of the fact that they are coming in from the lower division. They lost their first series to a team that was in that lower division, that being Polaris. I don't really feel like I can put them much higher than this right now in comparison with some of the other teams. I thought that there were some highlights in that match, but it was just the first match of the DPC. My main concern comes from the fact that they start off 0-1, and their next 2 series are up against Boom, who they play against tomorrow, and then right after that they play against T1. So it's pretty likely that Enigma Galaxy ends up starting off 0-3 for this DPC tour. Whether or not they're going to be able to turn things around in the next one, I don't know. This is an incredibly difficult upper division in Southeast Asia, but for now, I have them at number 34, and I'm hoping that they can turn things around. At number 33, and rounding off the bottom of this list, this row here, I have Infinity. Infinity also loses their only series of the week so far. They just lost to an Infamous. I thought it was still a pretty good series for them. There were some highlights in there. They even took a match off of Infamous, which looked rather dominant when they did it as well. My main concern is that the fact that they weren't able to keep up with Infamous in that series. They did end up slipping out and losing to them, which again, it isn't necessarily a bad thing. Infamous was playing some of their best Dota and was one of the strongest teams in the previous tour. I just would like to see a little bit more for Infinity before I feel comfortable moving them up in the list. And that's why I have them at number 33 so far. Now, kicking off our, fourth row here, we have at number 32, The Cut. The Cut, again, kind of strange. With a bunch of these teams near the bottom, sure, they lose their first series. Sure, they're one of the teams coming in from the lower division. But they're getting off to pretty decent starts, taking some games off of some impressive teams. And for the case of The Cut, they take a game off of Evil Geniuses, which is better than they ever did in the last time that they were in the upper division. And a pretty impressive game as well. It was a hard-fought win. It took them nearly an hour to do it. But after the rough laning stage that they had, for example, in their offlane, I'm sure you guys saw that clip of Jirax playing Enchantress, pretty much just solo winning the lane with that one creep that summons the skeletons. But regardless, I thought The Cut had a pretty good series. And after that win that they had in game one, it kind of slipped from there. But I can see this being an improvement on their previous tour that they are in the upper division. Again, the fact that they were able to take a game off of a team as good as Evil Geniuses, I can feel like there could be some excitement for this team. And we'll see how they're able to do in this upper division in North America. Coming in at number 31, and I'll keep it short with these guys because they actually have not played any matches yet. I just currently have them here. It is Lava. They're obviously 0-0 so far. They play their first matchup against Apu King Kings on Sunday. We'll see how that matchup goes. It's going to be crucial for them to get those early wins if they want to avoid relegation. I do think that Lava is playing to make it to the middle of the division as opposed to the top. I don't find it very likely that they finish anywhere near the top two, so avoiding relegation, getting these quick wins as early in the season as possible is going to be super important for them, and we'll see if they're able to do that against the Kings on Sunday. Following that, at number 30, another team from South America who actually impressed me quite a lot, and that's why I currently have them ahead of Lava. We have Balrogs, who lost a series against Beast Coast 2-1, but had a lot of notable highlights, and honestly, they probably could have won that series. It was a bit of a mistake from Balrogs, honestly, just making it look like Beast Coast was clearly the more experienced and well-composed team. Balrogs maybe rushing their advantage a little bit too much, going high ground without an Aegis, making a costly mistake that would end up costing them game 3 in that series. But all in all, other than that one mistake, I thought Balrogs had a pretty fantastic series against Beast Coast, and I'm pretty excited about the rest of this tour. Honestly, both of the teams coming in from the lower division in South America, Infinity and Balrogs, I think have pretty bright futures. And with teams like Hakori and Lava, who I've already talked about in this video, not looking as strong as maybe they should be in the upper division, I think there's a realistic opportunity for these teams to actually stay in the upper division for the following tour. We'll see how that goes. At number 29, I have Entity. Entity, honestly, they had a pretty rough start. And if you look at Western Europe's upper division, it's like coming in from the lower division, you're immediately greeted with teams like Team Secret, Gaming Gladiators, who just came in and won the regional finals, Team Liquid, Team Enigma, you have OG and Tundra. Those are 6 of your 7 opponents, the other one being Brame, who you've already played in the lower division. They unfortunately start off by playing against Tundra, who you're thinking like, God, how are they going to beat Tundra? You know, they just brought in Soxa. Tundra's been looking so good, too. And they take a game off of them. The first game, they ran that Huskar pick, which they picked in the first phase, and they made it look pretty good. Tundra did make them work for it. That was not an easy win by any means. But after that first game, you could really see that Tundra was the much more composed and experienced team. They even let them have that Huskar for the second game as well, and they beat them pretty hard in the following 2 games. So other than that, Entity, they kind of impressed me right out of the gate. Again, taking a game off of a team like Tundra, very impressive. Not something to overlook whatsoever. It's just going to be a matter of if they're able to improve upon that, if they're able to replicate that success against other powerful teams in the region. It is a very, very difficult division. I feel like I talk about that every time I talk about Western Europe. We'll see if they're going to be able to keep their head above water. Coming in at number 28, we have Execration, who goes 0-1. And honestly, their only series that they've played this week was against SMG, and I thought it could have been worse. The first portions of both games I thought were pretty good. Pretty much up until the 15 to 20 minute mark, things were looking quite good for Execration. And considering the fact that they have gone through a substantial amount of roster changes since the previous tour, that's a pretty good sign. However, once we get past that 15 to 20 minute mark, as we saw in that series against SMG, you could really see that the lack of cohesion in the roster, and no blame to them, obviously, they've only been together for a very short time, but the cracks in the foundation would start to show, and a team as good as SMG is going to exploit that, and that's pretty much what we saw. So even though Execration loses first series, and sure, it didn't look like the closest series ever, I can definitely understand why Execration struggled, and I'm hoping that they're able to turn things around and really come together as a team quicker than they did in the previous tour, which of course wasn't all that great for them. They've got some fantastic players like Palos and Tino who have now joined the team, so we'll see how Execration is going to be able to do in the coming weeks. At number 27, we have LBZS, who is actually one of only two teams that has played more than one match in this week already. However, they lose both of them. And the reason I don't have them any lower than this, despite the fact that they lost both of their series, is because I thought they honestly didn't play all that terribly, especially that series that they had against Vichy Gaming. There were some notable highlights in that series. That one series that they played against Aster was pretty bad, though, when they got 2-0'd. Both of those games together were like 55 minutes long, which was a very, very quick win for Aster. We'll see what LBZS is going to be able to do in the coming weeks. I could really see this going either way. I don't know how much higher LBZS will be on the power rankings going forward. I can see them dropping as well. Again, these upper divisions are much stronger than they were in the previous tour, and they were able to keep their head above water in Tour 1. We'll see if they're able to do it again in Tour 2. Getting off to an 0-2 start already is not exactly what you want to be seeing from this team. So they've got another matchup before the end of the week, in fact, so we'll see if they're able to win that one. At number 26, as we are now approaching the end of this row, I have Obi Neon. And Obi Neon, similarly to Execration, they lose their series that they do play, but there were a lot of notable highlights, if not even more notable highlights than the Execration series. They were playing against, in my opinion, a stronger team in Fnatic, and they managed to take a game off of them, and they didn't really look like a team that had gone through some roster changes, and they kind of came together quite well. And this was a series that, even though Fnatic walks away with the win, Obi Neon has a lot to look back on and be pretty happy with. Now, I don't know if they're necessarily going to be in contention for a major slot. I don't think that they're a top half team currently in Southeast Asia, but this is a pretty fantastic start. Again, even though it is a loss, I can see Obi Neon keeping their head above water for this tour. We're only one series in, so maybe I'm getting too ahead of myself, but I did like what I saw when I watched that series. And finally, ending off this row before we get into the top half of the board, which obviously isn't exactly the halfway mark because we have so many teams absent from this list. We have Enigma Galaxy. Yes, the Western European Enigma Galaxy. I have my concerns with this team as well. I mean, the last tour was so strange. They started off 0-4, and then they won 3 series in a row to get themselves as tiebreakers. There was so much hype and momentum behind them. Then they lost every single series, every single match on that tiebreaker day terribly. And we didn't see them play for quite a few weeks until we saw them at the Dubai Invitational, which obviously I don't account into my power rankings, but I thought they had a pretty good run in the Dubai Invitational. They were able to take down teams like OG in it, who they had really struggled to take down inside of the DPC, which we saw this week after getting absolutely handled by OG. But again, I don't know where Enigma's going from here. I don't know what Enigma we're going to be getting for the first few weeks of this DPC. They're getting off to a rough start, much like they did in the first tour. We'll see if they're able to turn things around. Again, it's that first series against OG wasn't really one that you could really take too much out of that was good. It was a lot of messy play, messy drafts that really never really came together, and so I'm hoping that there's some improvement in the coming weeks for them. I do have my concerns, and again, I mentioned this in my prediction video. I think if there's any team right now that was an upper division team in the previous tour that could likely drop to the lower division, I think Enigma Galaxy is my first ballot pick for that. And so if Entity wants to keep their head above water, if Brame wants to keep their head above water, I think Enigma Galaxy might be the first one to go. So it's going to be crucial for them to get some wins in the coming weeks. Now moving on to the next row at number 24, and I'm going to be trying to go through this a little bit quicker. I'm realizing now that I'm talking a lot about these teams, despite the fact that we're only one series in. My apologies, I just really like talking about Dota and these teams. It's been really fun to watch them all this time. At number 24, going 0-1 this week, we have Wildcard. And Wildcard, I do have them this high, even though they go 0-1. I thought they had a good tour in the previous tour, so this first loss that they had against Quincy Crew, one of the best teams of the region, is not one that I necessarily busted them down all that much for. There were some highlights in that series. They gave Quincy Crew a pretty hard time in that second game. Whether or not it was because Wildcard was playing well or Quincy Crew was making some crucial mistakes, either way, Wildcard was capitalizing on those mistakes, giving them a hard time. And so for now, I have them at a very comfortable 24. I could see them really going either way from here. I'm just going to have to see how they do in the coming weeks against some of the other teams in this division. Again, they started off against one of the toughest teams, so understandable that they lost that one. Following that, at number 23, we have Polaris, who have a very impressive start to this tour. They start off by taking down their lower division rivals, Enigma Galaxy, in a pretty convincing series, 2-0. Not really any sort of room for Enigma Galaxy to come back into that series, and I already kind of talked about that when I did talk about Enigma Galaxy. So for Polaris, they get off to a strong start. It's going to be a matter of if they're able to actually keep up with the other teams in the upper division that have been here since the first tour. I don't see them being a top half team. Again, Southeast Asia is very, very packed, especially near the top with teams like Boom, T1, Fnatic, and SMG. But if they're able to stay competitive, if they're able to take wins off of teams like Execration and like OB Neon, I can definitely see them being an upper division team for Tour 3. These next few weeks are going to be very, very important. At number 22, a team that has not played any matches yet, but is going to be staying here just based off of their performance in the previous tour, I have Apu King Kings, and for the Kings, I have my concerns. Again, they're not a team that I feel super confident about having this high up, but after their performance in the previous tour, I can't really bust them down all this much, especially since they haven't even played a series yet. They had a nice run finishing in the top 4 in South America in the first tour, and now that this upper division in South America is stronger, it's going to be interesting to see if they're able to keep up with the division, if they're able to still be one of the better teams in the division, or if the new teams coming in, like Infinity, like Balrogs, are going to pass them. That's one series that I'm very, very excited for. One APU King of Kings ends up playing against those new teams. At number 21, we have 4 Zoomers. Again, 4 Zoomers, kind of the same thing as King of Kings. They have played a series already, and they look pretty good in it. They beat Simply 2 based in that series. I thought Moo had a pretty great series, at least in the games that he won. Game 1 and 3, I thought he played fantastic. Game 2 was quite the opposite. I think he went like 2-13 or something like that on an off-lane Vengeful Spirit. But regardless, 4 Zoomers showing that they're still able to reliably get these wins over the teams that are traditionally weaker in the region. It's all about making that next step for 4 Zoomers. It's all about actually being able to be competitive and take games off of the best teams in the region, maybe even take a series off of teams like Evil Geniuses, TSM, and Quincy Crew, as that has really been the struggle with 4 Zoomers for years at this point. So I'm hoping that they can make that next stride. Getting this first win against Simply 2 base is a good step there. That's already a win for them in the standings. All right, now moving on to number 20, I have Vichy Gaming. And honestly, Vichy Gaming, they play 2 series this week. They win one and they lose the other. But even though they split their series 1-1, what a great week for Vichy Gaming. I mean, they start off by playing against PSG.LGD, the Goliath of not only the region, but the DPC itself. And they looked pretty good in that series in the games that they lost. Sure, Game 3 wasn't necessarily the closest loss ever. PSG.LGD kind of handled them, but Vichy Gaming was very dominant in that second game. They took down PSG.LGD in a very, very reliable, dominant fashion, and I was very impressed with them. So even though they lose that series, I didn't even move Vichy Gaming down all that much after losing to PSG.LGD. One, because it's the best team in arguably the entire DPC right now, and also they looked pretty good against them. But it was their series against LBZS that they utterly dominated. Right after bringing in Yang to play offlane for them after previously kicking Irving, who I'm going to be including in a News of the Day video tomorrow likely. That they really impressed me. And so for Vichy Gaming, again, they lose one series, but for a team that is likely in contention for finishing top 4 in the region with other teams like Extreme, who are new to the region, and Ehome, who maybe slips down, getting this win up against LBCS is crucial for Vichy Gaming, and hopefully they are now on an upwards trajectory. That first tour was pretty disappointing. They just bring in Yang again, who previously played on Elephant. We'll see if it ends up being enough for them. At number 19, another team from China. However, these guys have not played a match yet. We have Ehome. Again, Ehome, similar to teams like Apu King Kings. I am purely keeping them here just based off of their performance in the last tour. We'll see how they do in this one. They have their first match on Sunday against Magma, so that's going to be a really fun one to watch, seeing if Ehome is going to be able to beat some of the new kids coming into this upper division, or if Magma is maybe going to be able to upset them and get themselves off to a good start. Either way, I expect Ehome to be around the same spot that they were in the last tour. No roster changes, and overall, even though the upper division is a little bit stronger in China, I still see Ehome as one of the better teams in the region. Sure, they finished 4th place, but in a region as tough as China, 4th place is pretty damn good, and it would have gotten them to the first major if we would have had one. Following that, at number 18, we have Quincy Crew. And yeah, Quincy Crew is a little bit low. But honestly, I busted them down quite a little bit. If you guys haven't seen the little screenshot I did of my power rankings before the tour started, I kind of ranked every single team that made it to the regional finals based on where they placed. So I had all the first place teams together at the top and then all the second place teams afterwards. So Quincy Crew was grouped in with all the teams that finished 3rd place. And that's kind of where they still are currently. I wasn't super confident with their first series win against Wildcard Gaming, which has me a little bit concerned. Again, they kind of flunked out of those regional finals against both TSM and Evil Geniuses with some pretty rough losses here and there. And then the series against Wildcard, sure, they win that one 2-0, but that second game was pretty iffy at certain points. Again, making some critical mistakes that a team like Quincy Crew usually doesn't make against teams like Wildcard. And it just has me a little bit concerned. Hopefully that was just some sloppy play that will end up getting itself adjusted to by the time we get further into the tour. But for now, I have my concerns with Quincy Crew. And again, only 2 teams from North America make it to the next major. If Quincy Crew keeps up with this play, I don't know if they'll end up being one of them, but we'll have to see. All right, following that and ending off this row right here, we have Team Secret, who gets off to a fantastic start. Again, because I had sectioned all these teams based off of their performances in the regional finals, Team Secret was not even in the top 24 or even in the top 20, because obviously with all the Eastern European teams, every team gets moved slightly up. But overall, Secret, I really like what they did, moving Nisha back to the mid lane, Sumail to the carry position. Nisha looks fantastic on the mid lane, which feels weird to say because Sumail has always been the king of the mid lane. Nisha has looked fantastic, and that first series against Team Liquid was a great one. Game 1 was a really close nail-biter match, and Game 2 was dominant from Secret. So they only move up a little bit right now, but I'm totally expecting Team Secret to be one of the best teams in Western Europe in this tour. I am that confident in the changes that they made to their roster in switching those 2 positions. So we'll see how they do. All right, so now moving into the top 2 rows here. Starting off with number 16, we have SMG. I already kind of talked about them a little bit when I was talking about the Execration series. They get a nice win there, 2-0. And honestly, with Execration being a team that had a lot of roster changes very recently, SMG showed their composure, their experience that they've had as a team by just kind of outlasting and out-team fighting and outmaneuvering Execration on the map all in all. So even though it might not have been the toughest series, it was a still pretty damn good win for SMG and an impressive one at that. And it still got me pretty confident that these guys should still be a top 4 team. We'll see if they can edge themselves into the top 3. That's what it requires to make a major, but great start for SMG so far. At number 15, another great start so far to the tour, especially with their recent roster changes that they've made, we have Tundra. Tundra is a team that I know a lot of people want me to have higher up on the board consistently, and every single time I'm slowly getting them further up to the board. They lose a series really bad, they blow a series, they lose their opportunity, and I have to kind of bust them down a little bit. I'm hoping that's not the case. They have looked really, really good with Soxa and their new roster. That first series against Entity, again, was fantastic. They lose that first game, sure, but they really make Entity work for it. And then as soon as that first game was done, they just showed that they were the far superior team at adapting in a series and overcoming, building new strategies around their opponent, as they literally gave Entity their game-winning Huskar again in game number 2 and utterly destroyed them with it in game 2 and game 3. So fantastic all around for Tundra. Again, I'm expecting them to be moving up on the board. We'll see if they're able to actually do better than they did in the previous tour. At number 14, going 1-0 in the week as well, we have Fnatic. Again, not necessarily the cleanest win over Obi Neon. They win it 2-1. And given the separation between the 2 teams on the board here, it could just be a testament of maybe OB Neon being much better than what I have them currently rated on. Of course, I am still heavily rating them on the previous tour, and as we get further into this tour, I'll start, moving them up more if they're starting to get more wins. Or if Fnatic was just maybe having an off day and not playing as strongly as I know they could. Either way, they get the win that they need. Again, the top half of the division is incredibly close, and getting this series win is super, super important for Fnatic. If they had lost this series, that would have been pretty crucial, and who knows, that one series loss could maybe have been the thing that avoided Fnatic from making the second major. Who knows? Either way, I have them at number 14, and I still expect them to be one of the best teams in the region and the DPC as well. At number 13, we have OG, who are kicking things off with a bang, with a fantastic win over Enigma Galaxy. Again, I talked about it when I talked about Enigma Galaxy in Western Europe. What a dominant win. What a crushing win. Showing that they're still able to play with the flair that we know that OG has been able to do and what they've been known for. Playing the carry position Vengeful Spirit in game number 2 and making it look so good. He got, like a double rampage in that game. All around, fantastic play from OG. Just showing that they really have Enigma's number. Other than that one series that they played in the Dubai Invitational, OG has been able to consistently destroy Enigma Galaxy. All the games have looked not even close. So for OG, they get themselves off to a good start. A very, very good start at that they have to finish in the top 4 of this division. A very tough division as well. So this is a fantastic start for them, and I'm expecting them to be, they should be in the top half, but again, very difficult division. At number 12, going 1-0 on the week, and they play against one of the weaker opponents of the division, but still, I have to give them the respect where it's due, and that's Thunder Awaken. Sure, they get a win over one of the weaker teams, but it was a win nonetheless, a pretty dominant win at that. Again, showing that they're not necessarily winning me over in their drafting. I still think their drafting is a little bit weak, as that second game against Hakori was more of a beatdown than anything. It wasn't as much of a strategic win. It was kind of just 5 players that are much more skilled and mechanically skilled and strategically skilled than the other team, just kind of beating them down with heroes that wouldn't traditionally win those matchups. But hey, a win's a win. They get themselves up to a good start. We'll see if they're able to still be the top seed in South America for this upcoming tour. They did flame out a little bit in those regional finals. Hopefully that was just a fluke. We'll see. At number 11, another team from South America, and one that is right next to Thunder Awaken. I'm very curious to see how this one ends up panning out throughout this tour. I have Infamous. Infamous as well, starting off 1-0. Their series not being nearly as convincing as Thunder Awaken, but just because they did have that nice run in regional finals, and overall just a fantastic first tour. I do have them slightly ahead of Thunder Awaken right now. That win against Infinity was still pretty nice. They did have that rough game 2 against them, which wasn't exactly the prettiest game ever, but they pull away with the win, and I am expecting good things from Infamous. And as of right now, they could still be a top 2 team in South America. It's going to be a very close race, I have a feeling, for that top 2 finish in South America for the second major. All right, moving in now to number 10, I have Aster going 1-0 in the week. And sure, they only play one series. They play that series against LBZS, who sure isn't one of the stronger teams in the region, but man, what a dominant performance from them. They won both of those games in a combined 55 minutes, which is absurdly short. The first game was 23 minutes long. And all in all, Aster showing that they're more than likely going to be attending the major. They are still one of the strongest teams in the region, even if they did falter a little bit in those regional finals, failing to be able to beat RNG on an actual consistent basis. These guys are still one of the best teams in the division, and it shows. And I'm very excited for these teams, the top teams in China, to play against teams like Magma and like Extreme, who are new to the division. I'm very curious to see how they end up mixing. And at number 9, just barely missing out on the top row, although very likely could be top row in the next week. I still think they're a fantastic team, even though they are not in the top row right now. I have Team Liquid, and I think this is the highest rated team I have right now that went 0-1 on the week. But there were still a lot of good things to pull out of that series against Team Secret from Liquid. I thought their drafting was fantastic, and even though Team Secret did come away with the winning game 1, that was a very, very close game 1, and really could have gone either way. I think just a few crucial mistakes ended up costing them the game. And game 2, sure, was a little bit rough, but I'm not going to move Team Liquid down too much for losing a series to a team like Team Secret and losing only one series. Of course, if the losses start adding up, I will be moving them down. But for now, with just that one loss, I don't really have any reason to doubt Team Liquid, and I can definitely still see them being one of the best teams in the region. So I have them at number 9. And now moving into the top row here, kicking things off, and this might surprise a few people. For fans of the team, you might be wondering if I completely forgot about you guys or not, but no, I have you guys at number 8, and that is Evil Geniuses. All in all, this is largely based on their performance in the back half of the first tour and the regional finals performance, going all the way to the grand finals, through the lower bracket, and then going all the way to 5 games against TSM FTX, capitalizing on those mistakes that TSM was making in the grand finals. I have EG very highly rated, and sure, their first one wasn't the most convincing. They lost their first game to the cut, but it was a very long one. They really made them work for it. Their lanes were still very dominant. I was very impressed with their performance in the laning stage, and then again, game 2 and 3, they adjusted and they made the right moves, and they just crushed the cut in the following games. So I know some people are going to think that I have EG a little bit too high right now, but based on how well they've been playing, and Nightfall is starting to play very well, and Jirax is really starting to look a lot more comfortable on his position, that with the combination of having Arteezy, Crit, and Abed on your team, I'm expecting good things. And honestly, it's entirely possible that EG ends up losing like their next 2 series or something like that, and they drop down the rankings, and everyone flames me for having them this high in the first place. But yeah, this is just based off of watching them for these past few months. I've got pretty high expectations for EG in this tour. All right, at number 7, and they have not played a match yet in this tour, we have RNG. Again, RNG, very impressive run in the previous tour. They kind of struggled with beating some of the better teams in the China's upper division in the first tour, like PSG.LGD and then Aster. And as time went on, as we got closer and closer to the regional finals, they became much more confident, much more consistent in being able to beat teams like Aster. Sure, they might not have been able to get to the next step of beating teams like PSG.LGD, which is completely understandable. But the fact that they're able to reliably beat Aster, as of right now, one of the best teams in China, RNG has me very impressed and very excited to see them at a major. These guys should be a top 4 team at least. They should be a top 3 team realistically, and I'm excited to see how they end up doing in their first series, which they play on the 22nd, which is Tuesday, up against Vichy Gaming, another team that I've been pretty excited with so far in this tour. At number 6, we have yet another team that has not played a series yet, and funnily enough, there's actually quite a few teams in this top row that haven't played any matches yet, but just based off of their reputation and their their performance in the first tour in those regional finals, I have to have them in there right now. Once we see some matches, maybe that'll change, but at number 6, I have T1. No matches as of right now being played. They are bringing in Gabby. We'll see how that goes. He looked pretty damn good in those regional finals, and I can only imagine that the team is getting better the longer that he's on the roster. They've got their first match tomorrow up against Polaris, which is going to be really fun to watch, not only to see the first taste of this new roster in the actual tour, but also to see if Polaris is going to be able to stand up to these guys, as, again, this upper division in Southeast Asia, super strong. At number 5, we have Beast Coast going 1-0 in the week. They win their only series that they had up against Balrogs. Again, not the most convincing win. It's entirely possible that Balrogs could have walked away with that win, but they do come away with the point anyways. I don't really see any reason to bust Beast Coast down all that much. It's possible that if they continue to struggle in these winning series that they have against some of the weaker teams, like say if they play against Hakori and it takes them 3 games, or if they play against Lava, then I will definitely not have Beast Coast nearly as high. But all in all, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. They had a super, super impressive run in the regional finals. And as of right now, I'm just going to keep them at number 5. Again, subject to change in the coming weeks. Which brings me now to the top 4 here, kicking things off with the next 3 teams actually not having played any matches as of yet. I'll start off at number 4 with Tsm Ftx, who are 0-0 right now, obviously. They play their first matchup tomorrow up against DogChamp, so that's going to be a fun one. Again, DogChamp new to the division. We'll see how they do with this first taste. It's going to be a very difficult one, as, again, it's one of the top teams in the region. Following that, at number 3, we have the Gaming Gladiators, who also haven't played any series yet. They play their first matchup tomorrow as well, up against Brame. And then at number 2, we have Boom. Also, no matches played. They play their first matchup tomorrow as well against Enigma Galaxy. So, Boom is going to be playing their first match tomorrow, which is exciting. And Enigma Galaxy, again, their next 2 series against Boom and T1 are going to be pretty telling about how this rest of the tour is going to be going for them. It's quite likely that Enigma Galaxy in Southeast Asia ends up going 0-3 to start off the tour, which is not something you really want to be seeing, but not something that's impossible to come back from. So we'll see how that goes. Which leaves me now to my number 1 spot, and how could I really go with anyone else, especially since we do not have any teams from Eastern Europe here. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge for Team Spirit. We have PSG.LGD, who go 1-0 on the week. And I talked about it a little bit when I talked about the Vichy series, which was the game that they played, the team that they played against this week. They did have that game, which looked pretty rough against Vichy Gaming, but PSG.LGD is still playing so well. In the games that they win, it looks so dominant. And even in that game that they lost, there were still some highlights. And again, it's just one series. If they continue to struggle against some other teams, I don't really think that they can be considered the best team in the DPC. It's always going to be hard to compare these teams against one another when they're not in the same region, especially since we didn't have a first major. But as of right now, I have PSG.LGD at number 1, and I would love to hear who you guys have at your number 1. Thank you guys so much for watching the first edition of Tour 2's Power Rankings. Be sure to check in every single Friday for my Power Rankings. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.